Sorry, I was goofing around with that vamp earlier, and I'm just kind of like stuck inside of it at the moment. Happy New Year, everybody. Jack, Justin, Paul, Sergio, Miguel, anyone else who's on here. Raise the glass to 2022. Hope it's an amazing year for all of us. I'm here to help. Let me know what I can do to serve you guys. Any questions you have, any concepts you want to go over, anything you want me to demonstrate. I'm here. Brent, what's up, man? Awesome to see you. Miles, killing. Rob, great to see you. Nick, hey. Mike, awesome. Great seeing all you guys on here. I'm just going to sit and shed unless anybody has questions. I'm happy to refocus all my attention on you guys. But it's been a busy week or so, and I have not been cleaning out the cobwebs, so maybe I'll do a little cobweb cleaning. Dean, great to see you, man. Just shedding a little bit, getting my fingers moving. Again, I'm here to help if you guys have questions, but happy to just sit and shed if everyone's good. Happy New Year, Nick. I guess I will make an announcement or two since there's a few people on here. I wrote this out in an email, but a couple of goals of mine for our group this year, 2022. Those of you who maybe haven't been following along, I did launch a mentorship program, not required, but it is available. And I'm going to be putting a good bit of time and energy into helping the members who want to take part in that program. And some of them are in here. They have access to open house hours as well as weekly mentorship. Along with that, some of my plans for 2022, study group aside, I'm going to be rebuilding the website. The public side of it is like all out of date at this point. It's one of the reasons I did that masterclass in December, that free online 7-day masterclass, because the website's just wacky and out of date. And I just thought it would be a cool way to introduce some of the concepts that I teach to people who are struggling, constantly emailing me saying that the website makes no sense. The new format, there is a new format for the study group, which if you joined before I launched that new format, you still are grandfathered into the old format. The new format is kind of more similar to boot camp, where it drips out lessons every month and kind of walks people through the process. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time transferring. It's kind of basically all the same videos, but just broken down into smaller bite-sized pieces to work through. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time moving things over there. I'm also going to be adding new tunes to our tune studies. And I'm thinking I'd like to do it in like chunks, like thematic chunks. So right now I'm adding some bebop tunes. We started with Miss Jones, then we did Confirmation. I think I'm going to do a couple of Charlie Parker tunes because single note bebop improvisation is such a big part of our lineage. If you want to get into modern playing, having a deep understanding of legitimate, authentic bebop is extremely important. The blues, gypsy jazz, old school swing, like all of that stuff kind of feeds off of bebop in different ways. Deeper understanding of bebop will help us become better players in all of those respects. So I'm thinking of doing it kind of in these little like 3 to 4 tune chunks, maybe focus on one composer. Like right now I'm primarily focused on Charlie Parker. And then I'm sure we'll do like a Monk series and then some Latin jazz and then ballads and kind of focusing on different elements, either improv or comping or solo guitar. So I'm going to be putting stuff into our tune studies. I'm going to be, for those of you who joined when the program existed and have Forms for Life, I'm going to be finishing Cherokee. For those who joined after Forms for Life, because it's not currently available, I'm going to be taking those tunes and lessons and putting them into our tune studies because those are all part of the bebop vocabulary. So I will likely include Blues for Alice, the ideas we talk about in that course, as one of our monthly tune studies. And then I'll probably pick 1 or 2 Charlie Parker, not Anthropology, that's an example, 1 or 2 Charlie Parker rhythm changes tunes to put in there. And then maybe we'll cap the whole thing off with Cherokee. And then we'll, just keep moving through tune application, get into playing music, because that's really what it's all about. Yeah, those are kind of the big goals for the study group. For the inner circle, I'm going to be trying to, I've already tried to streamline the whole process into one course. I'm going to tinker with that course and see if I can get it even more streamlined and specific and to the point. I think those are all the big changes to the teaching concepts. And then some of you may have noticed that boot camp, I took all 8 of the boot camps that used to be separate and I combined them into one big long boot camp. So if you don't have access to that and you want it, reach out and let me know. And if you're in the study group and are curious to learn more about the inner circle, reach out, let me know. I'm happy to talk about it with you. Part of what I'm going to do on the website in updating it is have all that information publicly available so you can just go read about it, but it's not there yet. And I don't know how long it's going to take me to build a website because I hate building websites and I'm very bad at it. So if you're curious in the meantime, just chat with me. Miguel, have you met Miss Jones' bars 4 and 5 melody chord ideas, C7 and A minor, trying to fit melody and chords together? I'm not sure if that's a question or not. It seems like maybe, I can't tell if you're asking for help thinking through that. That might be better for a mentorship call where we can actually sit and play. And it might just be you telling me what you're planning on working on for 2022 or at the moment. So let me know if there's something specific you're asking about with that. I'm not 100% sure. Mike, Sergio and I are learning giant steps this month. He has more chops than me. I won't be attempting anything close to fast. Thoughts on the tune or general suggestions? Yes. Great tune. Kind of just like a little bit of an ego show-off tune. Very, very much worth the time. Let me pin this. I remember trying to learn that tune in college when I was getting into jazz and just being completely baffled by it and struggling hard. Why is it not pinning? There it is. It was one of those tunes, maybe the only tune, where I would try and learn it and I would kind of make a tiny dent, but insignificant. And then I would run out of steam and give up. And then a year later, I would try again. And then a year later, I would try again. Couple of things worth thinking about with that tune. Go way slow. Listen to the Metheny version a lot if you're not already. The Metheny trio, he plays it. It's not really a ballad, but sort of like a very laid back bossa nova. If you can learn to hang with that tune at that tempo, it's significantly easier to get it at faster tempos. It's actually a really beautiful version of it, the way Metheny plays it at that nice slow tempo. It's got a lot more lyricism to it. So a couple of things worth trying. And again, I do recommend it at much slower tempos. See if you can just voice lead basic 1-3-5 triads through that progression, right? So B major, D major, G. I'm not using any quadratonics, no chromaticism, nothing complicated right now. Right? Like 2 notes per chord. Okay. That's a halfway decent starting point. If you can get to the point where you can voice lead just basic triads, you can start playing through the changes. That's why I'm a fan of doing just 2 notes per. Don't try and arpeggiate positions. Focus on 2 notes. Similar to the half note game, but it might end up putting you into quarter notes because sometimes we have 2 chords per bar. So if you're playing half notes, you would only get 1 note per chord. But that's a good way to try and navigate through the changes without arpeggiating them. It's not going to give you the most exciting lines, but the interesting thing about giant steps is that it takes a lot less creativity to play over giant steps than it does to play a beautiful ballad. because really at the end of the day, all you have to do is know how to keep up with the changes at whatever tempo you're playing. And anyone who knows what they're doing within the tradition will recognize that you're playing giant steps. Very few people really add any level of creativity on top of the changes. That's like a whole other level. You have to be able to think very quickly to get to the point where you can use themes and play like actual ideas that evolve through the tune. I think I actually have a YouTube video up playing practicing thematic ideas over the changes. It might be, you might get some value out of watching it. Again, you'll notice it's a very slow tempo, but I'm trying to play a simple idea and then mutate it and evolve it and come up with variations over the changes. One good thing to do is just basic 1-3-5 triad for each chord. If you want to get a little bit more complicated than that, you can, what's the best next step? It's a little more complicated and a little simpler. Something that is worth playing with is to ignore the changes. Just look at the key centers, the 3 key centers, B major, G major, and E flat major, and play over each of them with the major tonic triad tension 2. Okay, so we're not going to hit the changes, we're going to hit the tonal centers and have these sort of scalar related phrases to play over each one. Did you catch it? B major, G major. Right, I didn't play a D7 chord, I played a G major tension 2. To E flat major tension 2. I'll put this over just a couple of chords so you can hear this at a nice slow tempo. Okay, you can now just start to kind of hear phrases moving through the changes. It's tough. It feels awkward, but it's, you know, just try and learn your basic quadratonics. Ideally, I would break it down into a position so you're not constantly jumping around the fretboard. Right. That's a good idea that you can mess with. You could add in quadratonics, 1 per chord. Again, unless you're playing it at that very slow Matheny tempo, it's going to be very difficult. Like, let's not beat around the bush. It's a tough form, a tough chord progression. So our goal should be to try and, until we're able to actually play like at a gig and play over it, our goal should be to look for the lowest hanging fruit. To me, the lowest hanging fruit is 1-3-5 of every chord, just basic triads. Or if you want to get more phrase ideas happening, condensed melodic progression. So if you see a 5-1, treat it as a 1. If you see a 2-5-1, treat it as a 1, and just do tension 2. Just try and get some phrases happening that respect the tonal center, the movement of the tonal centers, and let everything else worry about itself. Okay, that would be my recommendation to getting started with it. Mike, you were asking about on YouTube. Yeah, I can't remember if it's on my personal channel. It might be on my personal channel, or it might be on the NYC Jazz Guitar Masterclasses channel. Shoot me an email and I'll try and look at it. If you remind me, shoot me an email and ask about it, and I'll look for the video and see if I can get you the link. Robert, can I explain the hierarchy of importance, the hierarchy of harmonic importance? Yes. 3-7, 5, 9, 11, 13 group. 3, 7, 5, 9, 11, 13 root, 3, 7, 5, 9, 11, 13 root, 3, 7, 5, 9, 11, 13 root. It's worth memorizing it. It should be as memorized as your telephone number. The concept of it is that we're looking for the most perfect tension note possible to add to a triad. So our goal is, when we're creating quadratonics and coming up with tension notes to use to develop phrase-based improvisation, that tension note fulfills several important things for us. One is that it gives us melodic tension, which immediately unlocks the ability to play phrases. The next thing it does is it provides us with a specific type of emotion, which allows us to sort of put some level of our humanity and heart and soul into our phrases, so that we're not just stuck noodling with scales or outlining things intellectually, mathematically with chord tones. The next thing that it does, even though it's a tension note, it's helping imply a certain harmony. And harmony is built with specific notes and by avoiding specific notes. So like a C major chord, there are certain notes that are incredibly important to producing the sound of C major, and certain notes that will disrupt the quality of C major. Adding a D flat note to a C major chord, like a pure C major, is going to be very disruptive to the harmony of C major. So when we're adding tension notes, we really want, did I pin this one? I didn't yet, sorry. Let me grab that. When we're adding tension notes, we want to, especially if we only get one, we really want to pick at least a note that is respectful to the harmony, that's not going to disrupt it. And ideally, we want the most respectful. Like, what note is going to really accentuate the fact that, yes, I'm playing a D major triad, but really I'm playing over a C7 chord. Like, I want that, whatever the tension note, to say, hey, don't forget, this is C7. So the hierarchy gives us that ability by putting the chord tones in order of most harmonically respectful and important. The third of any chord is arguably the most important note. Okay, it tells us whether it's major or minor, which is so important. Like, it's like, I don't know how else to word it. It's just the most important note. The seventh is also very important. Right? Is it a major 7? Is it a minor 7? Sometimes we have 6 chords where it doesn't have a 7. It's kind of more of a 6 chord. So the 6 could sometimes actually fill in for that role. As we move across the hierarchy from the 3rd all the way up to the 9th, 11th, 13th, things start to become a little bit less significant. Are they great notes? Absolutely. But they don't say, like, if you play an A note, you're not implying C7 clearly. You might be implying a C13, but that 13 is not essential to the life force of the C7, okay? Which is why we put it towards the end. The very last note in it is the C note, the root note, which, while it is an important chord tone, adds nothing of depth. There's no 3-dimensional quality to adding a root note to a chord, because it's literally the root. It's the thing that's supposed to be hiding underground. If we're playing with a bass player, the bass player is playing it. If we're playing with a piano player, the piano player is playing it. It's probably already taken care of. And even if we're playing solo guitar, we might very well be implying it with our comping just by playing through the chord progression. So the root goes to the end. That's the basic gist of it. If you have any other questions regarding that, let me know. But the concept is, how do we know which of the 9, right? We have 12 notes in all of music. 3 of them are a melodic triad, which means we have 9 remaining notes that we could pick from to use for tension notes to create phrases. Which of those 9 work against a given chord? And of those, if we only have a chance to play one, which is the best one, the most perfect one? As our man Miles told Schofield, play the better notes. Not play the right notes, not stop playing wrong notes, play the better notes. We're looking for the better note. In many ways, you could argue that we're looking for the best note. That's kind of what the role of the hierarchy is. And then we can use it to find the secondary tension, the third tension, right? Those are also part of the better notes. But our first step, our first goal when we're applying a triad to a specific harmony is, what's the best note? What's really fascinating, and what Stefan continues to blow my mind with how brilliant he is that the more you get to know different upper structure triads and tonalities, and you learn what their primary tension note is, you'll just see it in tunes, like it's in the melody of these tunes. None of these composers were analyzing the hierarchy of harmonic importance, but their ear was finding it. F major, if we just did a basic run-of-the-mill F major triad over an F6 chord, we would find, using the hierarchy, that our most important note, our best note, is tension 2, right? I was just playing Days of Wine and Roses at the beginning of this. That phrase is F major tension 2. It's like built right into it. Okay. We will find this again and again and again and again in so many jazz standards where the hierarchy of harmonic importance, if you follow it to find the best tension note for any given triad, you will find that showing up in tons of tunes. Because ultimately what we're doing is we're looking for the coolest sounding best note. And, whether it's Charlie Parker or Monk or, Cole Porter, they were looking for those best sounding notes too. They were just doing it, I assume, with their ear and not with a sheet of paper and a pencil. That's the idea. If you have any other questions about it, let me know. Nick, do you have any tips on how to organize a daily practice routine when limited time is available? I have lots of ideas on this, and I don't know that any of them are the right one, so I'll just share a few random ones. I'm becoming more and more a believer in micro practices, like not looking for 30 minutes once a day, looking for 5 minutes 3 times a day. It's actually less time. I think there's something powerful about what's the Miles quote about jazz is it's not about the notes you play, it's about the notes you don't play. There's something very important about negative space. And when we talk about practice time, we're talking about positive space. We're talking about the activity of practice, but we never really look at the habits in between those practices. So if you practice for 30 minutes every day, let's say at noon from 12 to 12:30, not only are you practicing for 30 minutes, which is awesome, like that's great, it also means you're not practicing for 23 and a half hours, which is a long time to not practice. Your central nervous system, your neuromuscular system will forget things during 23 and a half hours. If you were to only practice for 5 minutes, but you did it 3 times a day, or let's say 30 minutes versus 5 minutes 4 times a day, you're actually practicing less, but you have smaller chunks of time in between those practice sessions, which means your central nervous system has less time to forget it. Okay. And I truly believe that this is like a legit thing. You could get more out of practicing less by putting shorter negative spaces in between the practice sessions. We are, at the end of the day, mammals. We are animals, and our sort of Darwinian evolution, it's survival of the fittest. And when you only do something for 30 minutes and then don't do it again for 23 and a half hours, your central nervous system and your animal instinct mind knows that it's not that important to you. Because if it was survival level importance, you would be doing it a whole lot more than 30 minutes with a 23 and a half hour break. Like that's just a leisure activity. If you do it every couple hours, if you practiced like hardcore practiced for 2 minutes every hour, like at noon you practice from 12 to 12:02, at 1 you practice from 1 to 1:02, but like hardcore focused. If you're awake for, let's say, 15 hours, you practiced 30 minutes, but you never went a full hour without reminding your body of that movement. Now your body's like, oh man, this is important. So that's one thing that I truly believe is worth thinking about is frequency of practice more than length of practice. There's also a lot of studies, scientific studies, that talk about how much the brain can actually learn and absorb for how many minutes before it just turns off. We could practice for 3 hours and you might only actually absorb information for the first 10 or 15 minutes. It's entirely possible. So that's one thing we're thinking about is it possible to find smaller pockets of time but dispersed throughout the day? As far as what to work on, how to work on it, the simpler and more fundamentals driven, the better. Okay. Be very repetitive um, during sections of your practice where you're just trying to get the basic gist of a fundamental down. Like if you don't know a position of a triad, you have to be very repetitive in how you use it. But we also want to be very playful and creative with it. We're trying to develop two very different mindsets. One is repetitive behavior and mastery of a sort of a way of thinking and moving, a neuromuscular system. So we want to understand a triad, see the shape of it, get our fingers to move through it. But we can't let ourselves get stuck there. We have to leave the back door of the house open to go into creativity land, right? We have this magical forest hiding in the backyard. And if all you do is practice a physical shape and movement over and over and over, you're actually not helping your creativity and you're actually closing your brain off from that way of behaving. So if you're practicing, let's say, a triad position, you have to spend a little bit of time on making sure that it's as perfect as could be. It will never be 100% perfect, but we want it to be close. We want to be moving towards perfection. And then we want to make sure that we're following that up with creative application, actual music making. So if I'm working on, let's say, this E flat major position, I'm going to spend a few minutes just on that. Then I want to be kind of like a little kid again, like anything you can think of to turn it into a game. Okay. Um, okay. I'm intentionally playing it very poorly with one finger, and I didn't mean to do it, but I kind of came up with this like skipping rhythm that it just kind of came out. But I committed to it like a little kid coming up with an imaginary game. I just jumped in and that was the game. It started off in my brain as, let's see what happens if I just play it with one finger. And then because I needed a chance to jump from one note to the next to turn the note into a staccato note, and then all of a sudden this rhythm showed up and I just played the game, right? Went to its full conclusion. These types of ideas, it's almost as much of a mental practice as much as anything else. Um, and it's a good way to make sure that we're staying creative, actually improvising. Does it sound cool? Not really. But if I were to put that over, again, now I'm just getting into a more complex game. I'm just being still that childlike nature, but now it's like a much more advanced game. Now I'm going to put that over E flat major triad. I'm going to put that over an E major 7 chord. Right, so now I'm taking fundamentals, basic, stupid, simple elementary school level structure, but applying it to like a PhD program. Okay, I'm just creating that major 7 sharp 11 sharp 9, and then it always becomes this game of growing on top of something. So get a foundation, grow on top of it. That's your new foundation, grow on top of it. So if I can see that, then I might practice that in the context of a 2-5-1. Right? Did you catch the E flat major triad I threw in at the end? So that was just a 2-5-1. Sounds relatively advanced and modern, but hopefully you could see that it's growing from that same point. So my standard practice, which there is no such thing as a standard practice for me, pretty much every time I practice, it's a little bit different, and everyone kind of has to find their own balance. But I usually start off with some kind of ear or creativity waker upper. Okay, like is it my ear paying attention, and is my sort of heart center humanity there? If those two things aren't there, then I usually can't get what I want to out of a practice session, because either I'm not paying attention with sound or I'm not fully present. And then it's just, maybe I'll build some muscle memory or something. But for me, I need those two elements there. So I usually start with some kind of ear training warm up and or creativity waker upper, which might be something as simple as picking E flat major tension sharp 4. And just sitting and improvising stupid simple phrases. Almost like spontaneous composition, like I'm actively trying to compose something with some consistency to it, something that is cohesive. So sometimes I'll do that. Sometimes I'll just do ear training exercises, see if I can identify different notes. That's usually how I warm up, because I'm a little bit less concerned with technique and speed than I am with connection with my sound, my ears being open and my creativity being there. And then I'll just pick something small. If I'm really into working on improv, I'll pick triads. If I'm really into working on comping, I'll usually pick shell voicings. Of course, there are lots of layers to how complex any of that can go, but I'll pick one thing and I'll, kind of work on it. And the whole goal is to make it seem as simple as possible in my brain and on the fretboard, and then grow in terms of creativity and application. Generally trying to get it either into a 2-5-1 and or a tune. That's like a very generalized blueprint for me a successful practice session. Again, if I can break that up multiple times throughout the day, I tend to feel happier about my progress. I see more growth and comfort growing, progressing by doing it multiple times a day. Again, not necessarily for 2 hours at a time, but for any period of time broken up throughout the day so that there's less downtime. So the central nervous system never has a chance to say, oh, this isn't that important. Like, yeah, sure, we needed to do this yesterday, but it's not like the lion chasing us is actually going to eat us if it catches us. We need to trick our bodies into thinking that lion chasing us, that desire to get better at music, is an actual lion that will eat us alive if we don't keep running. Okay. Just some thoughts. I don't know which of those kind of make sense to you, but there's a lot of different ways to practice. So just a couple of thoughts. Jack, I've been studying Erigin by Sonny Rollins, and the first measure is clearly an F minor triad. What is the monodic? What the hell? Why can't I say the word melodic? This is melodic triads. What is the melodic analysis of the G flat note? I'd have to sit. I've never analyzed that tune. I'd have to sit and really look at it. But my gut tells me that it's implying. How many other questions are there? I wonder if it's worth pulling up the lead sheet. Yeah, let me just pull up the lead sheet so I can actually do just of that one measure. Let's do a quick analysis of it. We won't do the whole tune because there's still some other questions. Pretty sure. Yeah. So what was confusing me is that you mentioned measure 1. So I was trying to think to myself, I was almost sure that G flat is implying the dominant chord, but I didn't remember it being implied in measure 1, which is just F minor. And I wanted to double check that G flat is not really in measure 1. So measure 1, interestingly enough, like I said, once you study quadratonics enough and you learn the primary tension note, the best tension note, you'll start seeing them everywhere. Measure 1, for anyone who knows the tune or is looking at Erigin. Oh, I forgot to pin these. I'm so bad about remembering to pin stuff. Where is your question? There it is. Measure 1, right off the bat. Like, not even just measure 1. The first 3 notes are F, F, G, F. Melodic Do, tension 2. That whole measure is F minor, tension 2. That is our primary tension note based on the hierarchy of harmonic importance. Has nothing to do with because Coltrane played it or wrote it or Sonny. Is this Sonny or Coltrane? Sonny. Why did I have Coltrane in my mind? That's the best sounding note. Why? Because it's super harmonically respectful. It implies F minor better than any other note could, outside of the F minor triad. Okay, so if I was going to improvise over this, I would jump straight for F minor tension 2, not simply because that's what Sonny wrote, like note for note, that's his phrase, but because that is the triad that's clearly being used melodically, and then that's our primary tension note. Sonny just has epic ears and was able to find that without Stefan laying out the formula for it. So the G flat note, right? We're on a new chord now. It has nothing to do with F minor. It has to do with implying the sound of a dominant, basically. Okay. We could sit and argue whether it's a C7 or maybe it's a G flat 7, right? I think what I would probably do for this there's an interesting set of notes. What would I do with that? Really tempted to treat this. This is why I didn't want to pull up the lead sheet and start thinking about this, because I'll just get sucked into it for the rest of the day. I'm hearing this as an E flat minor triad right now. So quick harmonic analysis, right? That's the melodic analysis, what's happening in the melody. I take it back. It's not E flat minor. It's what I initially thought it was going to be, and then I was trying to contend with that E flat note. But if you pay attention to the E flat note, that E flat note wants to move. Right? It's pulling down a D flat. So now we have what I was originally thinking, which is a G flat major triad. Okay, for those of you who are new with us, G flat major triad does not mean that we are playing a tritone substitution. This is still C7. You can use G flat over the C7. It's just a polytonal upper structure triad. Okay, this gives us our sharp 11 flat 9. Primary tension note, tension sharp 4. Okay, that's how I would contend with that note. Man, what a great tune. It'd be a fun one to work out. That should go in our tune vault for sure. Miguel, C over B flat to connect to C7 and A minor. Yeah, you could do that. I think that's going back that was about I haven't met Miss Jones. A lot of times I'll play that actually as a B flat diminished, which you can play a C major triad over B flat diminished. B flat diminished is obviously related to C7. It's It's part of the dominant diminished family, and it resolves really beautifully. G minor, B flat diminished to A minor. Resolves beautifully to A minor. You could also do G minor, C7. They're very related to each other. They're kind of the same thing. Ultimately, we're just trying to get to A minor. That's a nice way to kind of smooth out the movement so that it's not a big leap from C down a minor third to A, but we can actually create a little bit of a bass melody. And ironically enough, whether it's irony, coincidence, or fate, they kind of have the same primary quadratonic that we would use over both of them. Miguel, cool, will do. Mike, listening to Matheny will work on triads. Awesome, you're welcome, man. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 5. Just be careful you don't. I mean, it's okay to do this if you love the sound of it, but don't confuse our version of 1, 2, 3, 5 with Coltrane's version of his like very sort of digital pattern that like. Our goal is not necessarily to just get really fast at that and run through it. You certainly could do that. That is a quadratonic, right? It's a 4-note scale, but it is kind of missing out on all the emotion and the humanity and the energy of those tension twos. It's just playing through them. He's using them as passing tones to get from the root to the third of the triad, which is exactly how we would do it. But we want to really take the time to learn how to make phrases out of it, not just run through it, because we're not always going to get this cool sounding chord progression to rely upon. That's what I meant earlier when I said that it takes more creativity to play over an old school ballad than it does giant steps. With giant steps, all you have to be able to do is think very quickly and keep up with the changes, and your ideas will sound cool because the tune sounds cool. But a 1, 2, 3, 5 over like some old school standard is probably not going to sound that cool if you're just running it as a digital pattern. It can sound incredibly beautiful if you learn to take advantage of that tension too. Okay, so keep that in mind. Something to think about. Mark, tried working on giant steps using tonal centers a while back. I had as much trouble hearing it that way as trying to ride the changes. Yeah, again, it's a tough tune and they both present challenges. I think I'm glad you said this because this reminds me of something that I had to actively practice that took me some time forever ago. That's worth us discussing. The shift I think one of the things that makes giant steps tricky, even if we're just thinking tonal centers, is the shift in tonal center does not happen where we're used to it happening. Usually, for the most part, we often see these big tonal center shifts like on the downbeat of a measure. So you play one measure in one key, and then in measure 2, you're in a new key, or you play 4 measures of a key, and then in measure 5, you're in a new key. Here, those shifts happen quite often on beat 3 in the middle of a measure. So you have 2 beats of one tonal center, and then 2 beats of another one. And then usually that 2 beats lingers over. So you have quick example. If you're looking at the real book at the lead sheet, that might be helpful. B major, we open on B major. We have 2 beats of B major, and then immediately we move to beats 3 and 4. We're in G major. But we don't then move again 2 beats later, right? We have beats 3 and 4. Here's measure 1. 2 beats of B, 2 beats of G. Here's measure 2. We're still in G for the first 2 beats, then 2 beats of E flat, right? Then the next measure, we're still in E flat. Like it changes at very random. It's not random. It's just uncommon moments. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you really have to learn to feel that beat 3 and the shift that happens there. And just like with everything else, the best way to do that, simplify down, use less notes, worry about less stuff. Triads are great for this. Quadratonics are great for this. Go slower, use less notes, and really focus on feeling form. The mind can only wrestle with one challenge at a time. The human brain is amazing at learning new ideas, but it's not amazing at learning two ideas at the same time. So if you're still struggling with feeling where that tonal shift happens, isolate that, use as few things as possible on the fretboard, and really practice feeling that beat 3 where the shift happens. Okay. The second half of the tune is a little bit more square. It's a little more beat 1 changes, what we would expect to see. The first half of the tune, the first, 8 bars, has a little bit more of a wonky, like you're always kind of teetering on switching on beat 1 or on beat 3. It's a little hard to know when they're coming unless you isolate it and slow it down and practice it. That might help. And the other thing, Mark, that might help is not worrying about full-blown scales to approach the tonal center, but primary quadratonic, major triad tension 2. Again, it just gives you less stuff to think about, and every note you play now has a functional role in developing a phrase. So it's a lot easier to have those phrases coming out. That was a little bit of a bebop cheat. There's ways to find that with hard triads, but I wasn't playing a G major triad there. Right? So G major. Like I'm not looking at all of that when I'm playing over E flat. I'm looking at, so it just gets those phrases closer to us. We don't have to look for them. They're right there. We just have to go touch it and then go to the next one, touch it, go to the next one, touch it. Okay. So maybe give it a shot retrying it with major triad tension 2 for each tonal center and see if that unlocks some abilities for you. Mike, YouTube, yes. Rufino, happy anniversary. Happy New Year, man. Great to see you. Nick, I've been going to jazz jams for a few years, just starting the Inner Circle program and working on fundamentals. I have a task to quickly learn to apply new materials and stop using habitual pentatonics, I assume. Awesome. I'm here to help. Let me know at any point that you need it. Steven, no worries, man. Totally fine to be late if that is such a thing. Jams are great for practice, and I do not want to take a break from them in order to fix my playing, but it needs to be fixed. What's the best strategy to prepare for jams without taking your off? Oh, okay. So obviously, anyone who's hanging with us today, you're already working on the material. Clearly, I have a pretty different roadmap to musical mastery than you're going to find in a standard music theory book or a jazz guitar book. Don't let that force you out of using things you already know if you like what you know. So my recommendation is to kind of develop 2 different thought processes, 2 different minds. This is for Nick and for anyone else. Go to jam sessions, play what you know, have fun. Don't let anything get overcomplicated. That's like one railroad, okay? Alongside it, I'm going to help you build a parallel railroad, like a different set of tracks. I think those tracks will help you move faster towards your ideal goal and your ideal sound, but I wouldn't worry about trying to combine them yet. They will naturally start coming together over time. For now, just enjoy what you're doing at the jams, and then we will work together to develop a faster moving train that over time you'll start seeing in your playing, and those ideas will start showing up in jam sessions. So keep a very healthy mindset about it. Just have fun at the jam session. Don't get super down on yourself that what you're working on for 1 week or 1 month isn't showing up in your jam session playing. Don't get down on yourself if you're not, showing up all the other players. Like, that should not be the goal. The goal of the jam session is just have fun using what you know, using what you're comfortable with. The goal in the practice session is how do we grow our comfort zone and learn to have more fun and be more creative with less and less and fewer things. Okay. Eventually those 2 worlds will combine. And that's when really fun things start happening. And it doesn't take that long for little things we're working on in our practice shed to start showing up at jam sessions. But my recommendation for the short term, since this is all so new, is don't try and force anything. Don't try and just have fun and let the stuff we work on evolve and grow at whatever pace it works for you, and it will naturally start showing up in your playing. Of course, we want to push it when we're practicing, but not when we're at the jam session. That's kind of my best life advice, if you will, on that. Robert, yeah, Brent answered it for you. Gary, Happy New Year, man. Jack, I feel like it's a 5-1, very fleeting. I have a G flat when listening to Sonny. Yeah, I would definitely agree. It's also worth noting that we tend to think of dominant chords as 7 chords. Very often, the flat 7 is not as big a part of it as the 6. Sonny Rollins, Tender Madness. Right, the first chord's B flat 7. So if you're jumping straight for 1, 3, 5, 7, okay, you're able to outline a dominant 7 chord, which is cool. But that's not what Sonny played. Right, that's a tension 6. With a tension 2. Billy's Bounce. That's tension 6, not tension flat 7. Tension 6, not tension flat 7. Can you use flat 7? Yeah. But the tradition has a lot of tension 6s over dominant chords, sometimes more often than tension flat 7. They're both great. They just offer a slightly different quality to them. If you're hearing a G flat 7 chord in Sonny's version in the comping, I'm not sure. I'd have to go listen and transcribe it. I don't remember what the bass player was doing or what the voicing was. If it's an actual G flat dominant, if that's the case, then what are they playing? They're playing a G flat major triad. Tension 6. Okay. If it's a C7 chord harmony, it depends on how you want to think about it. They're going to yield the same bigger picture idea of harmonic tension of a dominant chord wanting to resolve. It depends on how you want to think about it. Obviously, if it's a C7, then that's the sharp 9. Either way, we would definitely want to stabilize that G flat note. So if you want to think of it as a G flat dominant, not a C dominant, harmonically speaking, you could play G flat major tension 2. Right, because that would be more of a G flat dominant. That would be the primary tension if it's G flat. If you're thinking of a polytonal sound, a G flat triad over C7, then the primary tension would be tension sharp 4. That has to do with the hierarchy of harmonic importance and which harmony we're trying best to accentuate, but they both work. Okay, you could even put them both together and have some wacky pentatonic scale that, G flat major tension 2 and sharp 4. Yeah, as soon as we start tinkering around with changing the chord underneath the triad, different options will present themselves. But in terms of the melodic analysis, I would definitely treat it as a G flat major triad. Mike, you're welcome. Oh, it's already after one. Let me just, looks like there's three more comments. Let's rush through these. If anyone has to go, obviously, totally cool. AJ, does repeating, interweaving short subjects in a longer time frame also alert your animal brain that something is important in your experience? So there's definitely studies that talk about the length of time the human mind can absorb an idea, and I think it's relatively short. I think it was somewhere around like 5 to 15 minutes. If anyone has that information and wants to share it, which is why if you try and practice one thing for too long, you'll eventually kind of burn out and get frustrated. And usually that's a sign that you should just like, I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I've never gone way too long with an idea, and that it didn't help in the long run. The question is, are we really getting the fastest learning process and most stress free and enjoyable learning process available to us? The science suggests that we're probably not. So, one way to use that information is to put the guitar down and come back later. Howard says 5 to 10 minutes. That's pretty much in alignment with what I've come across and heard. One way to deal with that is to have legitimate, like start to finish, a 5 to 10 minute practice session. Put the guitar down and go do something else. Go for a walk. Go have a snack. Like read a book. Do some office work. Whatever. The other way to handle it, and I haven't read any science that suggests otherwise, is just to change the topic after 5 to 10 minutes. Like do something totally different. Because it's not necessarily like, it's not that your brain knows that you're practicing music the whole time. It just knows that you're working on this one thing. You're trying to learn topic X. Okay, well, topic X and topic B are both part of music, but the mind doesn't categorize it as all part of music. It sees a new topic, and so it thinks it's learning something new. Interweaving short subjects in a longer time frame. Yeah, so that's a similar thing that is worth doing. But again, keep in mind that even if you practice for 2 hours that way and then take 22 hours off, you're still taking 22 hours off, which is why I'm kind of a fan of having smaller practice sessions. They don't have to be 2 minutes. They could be 30 minutes or an hour, and then trying to find 2 or 3 of them throughout the day. Okay. Just something to play with, right? It's, test it out. It's a hypothesis, and everyone should find their own balance because we're all coming from different places. Our neuromuscular systems and our central nervous systems all have different backgrounds. So you kind of have to find what works for yours. A very healthy mindset to have is to try and treat yourself as your teacher, like, and treat yourself as another person. So if your musical self were a friend of yours who was terrible at music, or a child who was just starting out, what would your intellectual mind recommend that they do to accomplish what they want? That should be your north on your compass, your guiding light. Okay. I'm obviously here to help and try and find what works and to offer ideas as to the most efficient types of things to practice and how to practice them. But you kind of have to keep an eye on what's working and what's not, and make determinations and recommendations to yourself, almost as though you were helping someone else learn to play music. Okay. Which I think is why, they always say, like, if you want to really know something, teach it. Because once you develop that mindset of having to teach an actual other person, it helps you kind of figure out what you need to do. Right. Because it's the same process. Teaching and learning, it's just two sides of the same coin. So by all means, add in multiple mini topics within a practice session, but it will not replace the idea of removing those long periods of time where you're not having your hands on your instrument and thinking about music. Okay. And not everybody has the lifestyle to be able to break that apart. But, even if you have a day job and kids, if you could find 5 minutes in the morning and do, like, I don't mean noodling, I mean like focused, hardcore, intense, passionate practice for 5 minutes, And then you could do 20 or 30 or 45 or an hour, 60 minutes after work before bed. Okay, you just split the day into two different chunks, right? So now you don't have a 23 and a half hour break in between your practice sessions. Now you have a 12-hour break. It's still kind of long, but it's significantly shorter than 23 hours. Now you're doing it twice a day, and your body's like, oh, okay, like this is kind of important. Maybe it's not a lion chasing us, but it's building the fire outside the cave. Like we have to get our body to think that this stuff is like part of our survival if we want to see faster and faster progress. Obviously, not everybody who sees progress practices this way. It's just one way to think about speeding the process up. Yes, that's the one, Mike. Motivic Development. Cool. You already found it. Awesome. And there is a performance of Giant Steps on SoundCloud. Now that you mention it, a very old one with a epic bass player back from North Carolina when I was living down there. Monster bass player. He's so good. Man, I forgot about that. Yeah, cool. Glad you found it. Awesome. Looks like we hit everything. I don't think I missed anybody's questions. Happy New Year. Thank you guys for hanging. Yeah, I think I already made all the announcements I wanted to make. If anyone's in the study group and wants to talk about inner circle stuff and getting more mentorship happening, I launched it a handful of months ago. It's been going very well. If you would like to step up 2022 and let me kind of get a little bit more involved, where it's not just me reading typed out questions, but actual like video face-to-face stuff where I can listen to you play. That is something that I'm offering now. It's not on the website because I need to rebuild the website. January is going to be a lot about rebuilding the website for me, but more tunes are coming in the tune studies. Inner Circle's available, new public side of the website on the way. And I'm around if anybody needs to hang or talk. Happy New Year. Thank you guys for such a cool 2021. So much fun. So excited to be hanging with, we have quite a number of new people in the study group and in the mentorship program for 2022. Really excited to be hanging with each of you and to watch your music unfolding. And yeah, what else can I say? Have a great week. And as always, happy practicing. See you guys.